So if you don't know what's going on, R. Kelly has recently been arrested and is being tried on multiple accounts of sexual abuse, including sex with minors. And like an idiot, he decided to do an interview talking about his charges without his lawyer present. Here's a few of the highlights.
I need help.
What kind of help?
This is the kind of help I need.
Yes, what kind of help?
I need somebody to help me not have a big heart because my heart is so big. Quit playing.
Robert.
I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You're killing me, man.
What are the lies that you're hearing that disturb you most?
Oh my God. I have a harem, what you call it, a cult. Mm-hmm. I don't even really know what a cult is, but I know I don't have one, you know.
Said every cult leader ever. Now, when I was watching the interview on the case against R. Kelly, I thought about how we have more of a reason to doubt the case against R. Kelly than we do to doubt the first Christians claiming to see Jesus raised from the dead. Now, I do realize that this video is going to be a bit niche, but if you've been following the R. Kelly case for like the last 20 years or so, and you want to know why you can trust what the first disciples and Christians said about Jesus, then this video is for all 10 of you. So let's get started. Is R. Kelly innocent? Well, it's not looking very good for him. Why do I say that? Currently, the evidence that we have that R. Kelly's been sleeping with underage women for like the last 25 years goes all the way back to him marrying Aaliyah when she was 15 years old and he was 27. In 2008, he was tried for a sex tape that was leaked, in which it appeared that he was having sex with multiple underage women, including one being as young as 13 years old. And we can fast forward to his 52-year-old self today, in which he lives with at least two girlfriends. One is 21 years old and the other is 23 years old. And he has been dating them or seeing them since they were minors. But recently, a documentary came out with a lot of people coming forward to talk about their experiences with R. Kelly.
The 6-part series interviewed 50 people, family members, your former tour manager, numerous women who all claim that you abused them. Yeah. Are you saying everybody in that documentary was not telling the truth about you? Everybody?
So what's the probability of R. Kelly's accusers lying and inventing things out of thin air? Well, before we answer, let's hear R. Kelly's side. So how does he explain the multiple and independent sources of women seemingly telling the same stories about his behaviors?
I'm going to name the names. Andrea Kelly, your ex-wife, Kitty Jones, Lisa Van Allen, Lisette Martinez, Geronda Pace, Faith Rogers, Asante McGee. You're saying everything they said in that documentary about you is not true.
They are lying on me.
Why would these women say the same thing about you? That you are controlling, that you are abusive, that you tell women when to eat, when to go to the bathroom, when they can sleep, where they can dress. Why would all these women tell these different stories about you if they were not true? And they don't know each other. That defies logic to me.
Right. Until you hear the explanation. You can start a rumor on a guy like me or a celebrity.
So they're lying on you. That's your explanation. They're lying on you.
Absolutely.
So he claims that it's all a big conspiracy and they're all lying. All of the women who, as far as we know, have never met or spoken to each other, came up with similar stories testifying to sexual and physical assault from R. Kelly, including him locking them up in rooms and punishing them by not letting them eat. This is what we call multiple independent sources. Whenever you have multiple stories that are independent of each other and they're all given a similar story, then it increases the chances of that story being true.
Have you broken any laws when it comes to women?
Absolutely not.
Have you ever had sex
No.
with anyone under the age of 17?
No.
Never?
No.
So they're lying on you. That's your explanation. They're lying on you.
Absolutely.
So now you can consider the question of, if they were lying, what would they have to gain? What would their motive be for lying? Now, in the case of someone like Jussie Smollett, his motives were pretty obvious. He seemed to be motivated by trying to gain more fame and attention, to be some sort of social hero.
I want them to see that I fought back. And I want a little gay boy who might watch this to see that I fought back.
To be the gay Tupac.
I'm the gay Tupac.
And possibly to get a pay raise. But when it comes to R. Kelly's accusers, what would they have to gain by lying? Well, they might get a little bit of attention from doing some interviews to gain some popularity, and there's a small chance that they might make a little bit of money, but that still doesn't explain how they would be given independent, similar stories about the strange stuff he does, like locking women up and making them ask permission to use the bathroom and punishing them by taking away their food. So at best, I think that the best we can say is that they might be motivated by a small possibility of a little bit of fame and a little bit of money. That's about all I can really think of. Now, because they're independent sources with very little to gain, the probability that they're sincere and honestly telling the truth is a lot higher. Even if they aren't being accurate in all of the details, the basic descriptions of the major experiences that they had all seem to correlate and seems to increase the chances of the stories being told sincerely and honestly. Now, what about the early Christians? How do they compare when it comes to the testimonies of R. Kelly's accusers? Now, to start, it's a historical fact that the first and the early Christians genuinely and sincerely believed that they had seen the resurrected Christ. So why does virtually every ancient historian, regardless of their religious background, agree that this is the case? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but let's just talk about a couple. How do we explain all of the multiple and the independent sources telling similar stories about having experienced Christ after he resurrected from the dead?
So what do you say about that?
Lie.
Now, you can also consider, if they were lying, what would they have to gain? It's possible that they could have been trying to pass on a religion that they knew was false, and so they chose to lie about their experiences to a bunch of people. But a problem is that the resurrection of Christ was a public event in the same area that Christianity exploded in. The truth of the resurrection could have been verified by the people who lived in the area. But even if the early disciples were able to pull off this conspiracy, what would they have to gain from it? The early Christians were a small and persecuted Jewish sect who the Roman authorities and the religious leaders of the day wanted to silence, torture, and murder. This is why they went into hiding right after Jesus died. The same people who wanted to kill Jesus wanted to kill them also. They had nothing to gain in terms of popularity or fame or money or sex or anything like that. The only thing they had to look forward to on earth was guaranteed torture and persecution or death. And these deaths weren't like the lethal injections that the government issues today. To give you an idea of how brutal the deaths were, they would stone them to death, they would punt them on stakes and set them on fire to light up the night sky, they would beat them and scourge them to death, they would tie up their hands and legs to two different horses and then have the horses run apart from each other to rip them in half. I mean, the list goes on. It was pretty brutal. So it doesn't look like they had much to gain either. But given that it could have been a conspiracy, let's just consider three more facts. First, when people are involved in some sort of conspiracy and they're all lying, the more pressure that you put on them, one of them is more likely to crack. The chances of one of them cracking increases with the more people that you have involved. Now, even if we're only talking about the 12 apostles, that number is still pretty significant, especially given the fact that the pressure was clearly pretty high on them to crack. Second, the more people you have in a conspiracy that aren't close family members, the higher chances of one or more of them giving up the lie. When it comes to the apostles, most of them didn't know each other prior to meeting Jesus. This would have raised the chances of one of them breaking loyalty to the group that they've only known for a few years. And lastly, the longer the time span is that they have to hold on to the lie without consistent communication, the more likely it is that their story is going to diverge in significant ways and one of them is going to give up. This is why police like to interview suspects and keep them apart, and they'll hold them for up to 48 hours, because given 48 hours, one of them is likely to crack. I mean, think about the Jussie Smollett case. The brothers eventually cracked after being held for 47 hours.
And I want a little gay boy who might watch this to see that I fought back.
In the case of the eyewitness apostles, they were scattered from Jerusalem all across the Roman Empire, all the way from Italy to India. And it's not like they had phones or Snapchat back then. Keeping those stories together for that long would be nearly impossible. They held their stories for several years before they even had them written down, so that way other people could memorize them and pass them on orally. And they were independently interrogated, and most of them were murdered for failing to recant their faith. They had no way of knowing if the others had already given up the lie and ratted everyone else out to save themselves from death. Because we have so many independent sources testifying to the same event, which by the way is like a gold mine when it comes to ancient history, and for a lot of other reasons that aren't even discussed here, we have every reason to not only believe the truth that the apostles were being honest when they claimed that they experienced the risen Christ from the dead, but also we have more of a reason to believe them than we do R. Kelly's accusers. Oh, and before I forget, tomorrow I have a new video coming out for the new series in which we're answering 20 arguments against the existence of God over a span of 20 days. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button because you don't want to miss it. And the next time you see people who doubt the sincerity of the early disciples, what are you going to say?
You're killing me, man! Y'all just don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it.
What do you mean?